71b, discussing, and we'll continue to discuss, a lot of forbidden mixtures. And many of the rules we use actually in halacha stem from the understanding of these gemara. It's interesting. About different mixtures. So we had already our case in the Mishnah. Things that are prohibited from benefit that get mixed into a bunch, they prohibit the whole bunch. And before we get to the reasons why, we're trying to figure out what the novelty of our Mishnah is. So to that we're 2 lines from the bottom, 71b, and it says, the hedyo nami tanale. We learned already that things that are prohibited from benefit, if they get mixed up, they're going to prohibit the rest of the mixture. Even if it's a minority, it'll still prohibit the rest of the mixture. Where do we learn that? We learned that in Masechta Avodah. The elu osrin, the osrin b'kol shehein. The following things are prohibited, and they prohibit b'kol shehein, even with a little bit. But what's that? Yain nesach, right? Our favorite drink. The yain, wine that was poured for idolatry, yain nesach. Or that, yain nesach or mavodas kochavim. Sorry, the question, yain nesach. Yain nesach mavodas kochavim. Yeah, either wine that was poured for wine libations or poured for idol worship. If that gets mixed into a bunch, so that into a whole mixture, that's going to prohibit the entire mixture. So we already learned that a long time ago. Whenever we finished what was our 4, 5, 6 months ago.
One bad apple in the bunch.
That's right. So what do we see? We knew that already. So what do you need our Mishnah for? So top of 72a. No, you still need it. Why? Because the difference is going to be the imei hasim. If you only had the Mishnah of Zara, hava mina lehedyo. Okay, it's prohibited for an individual, but maybe to prohibit the entire bunch of animals to bring us up as a sacrifice, that we're not going to do. We're only going to prohibit, the wine or the water or the drinks from human consumption. But maybe when it came to consumption of the altar, we're not going to be so strict. Malo, that's what you would have thought. Malo nafsidinu, the kuli, you're not going to throw away all the animals like our Mishnah. That you would not have known to throw away all the animals. If you would have only had our Mishnah that says if one prohibited animal gets mixed in the bunch, so then they're all going to be prohibited. Havamina, that's because Hanimidi kachim demayis. Yeah, to offer a sacrificial group of animals and one of them is prohibited for benefit, that's like disgusting towards the temple. That's not nice. You want to give the temple the most refined things possible. If you're going to give it a bunch of animals and one of them is forbidden for hana, it's prohibited from benefiting. That's not a nice thing to give. That's so to speak, disgusting in the altar's eyes. Okay, but you would not know, therefore, that yain nesach for human consumption is going to prohibit the entire bunch. So, you would have thought that yain nesach, which is I guess mixing in all your Pesach wine. So you would have thought that it's not as disgusting for a person to drink a mixture, which anyways biblically is nullified, but we're stringent that the whole mixture is prohibited. Okay, for human consumption, we're more lenient than for the altar. For the altar, you bring the best. For your guests, you bring second best. So that's why you need both Mishnayos to complement each other and teach you that things that are prohibited from benefit, that are mixed into a bunch, whether it's animals or whether it's drinks, are both going to prohibit the entire bunch, even though they're against the majority and they really should be nullified. But we're stringent when we say that they're not nullified. Yeah. Okay, now here comes the fun you've been waiting for. The kicker. Yeah, it's gonna be a long kick. We're gonna be kicking for a while. So now back to our mission. So once again, you have an animal that's forbidden for benefit, and it gets mixed in a bunch that are permitted for benefit. And yet what do we say? The entire mixture is prohibited. So it says, I don't understand what happened to the basics. If you have something which it falls into a majority, a drop of milk falls into your challah, you cannot identify the drop of milk that's somewhere there. If there's 60 times meat corresponding to the milk, so then it's nullified. It's called batal b'roi. Things are nullified in a majority. So in this case also, v'nibatal b'ruba. Let the forbidden animal, so it's mixed into 10,000. Okay, so why are all 10,000 forbidden? Let it be nullified. So it would be a while till we get the answer, but that's the question. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 4 exceptions that, at least 4 exceptions that when things are nullified in a majority, but there are a number of exceptions where they're not going to be nullified. So one of them is if it's something which has importance to it. If it's chashuv, that's not going to be nullified in the mixture. So another example is, let's say you have a beria, you have a full-fledged like a bug, full bug. That's considered important. That's not going to get nullified. You have we're going to see now you have an animal. Animals are considered important. They don't get nullified. So that the Gemara is going to say v'chi tema chashivi v'lo batri. Maybe the reason why they're not nullified is because they have importance to them. Now, what does importance mean? So we're going to see that it means when you sell them on the market, how do you sell them? Some things you always sell by the bunch, right? I don't know, eggs. You don't buy from the supermarket 1 egg at a time, right? That always sold in bunches. However, when it comes to I don't know, a bottle of wine, you can buy 1 bottle of wine. You see, it's on its own is important. So now there's going to be 2 opinions. What does important mean? Does it mean it's something which is generally sold 1 by 1, but not always? Or it's something which is always sold 1 by 1? Certain things are, I don't know, what's always sold 1 by 1, I don't know. Bottles of wine. You could buy them in the pack, no?
Yeah, but generally, you have to put.
No, but I don't need generally. I want. That's the other opinion. That generally it's all I want. We need something which is exclusively what? A motor car.
Yeah.
A car. You don't buy. You don't buy cars in Barrera, okay? Unless you're really wealthy. Yeah, but good. Okay, that'd be a good example. Like a car.
You're not buying a 6-pack of car.
Imagine the guy in front of you at the Honda dealership buys 5. That's right. So those are 2 opinions. So things that are generally counted 1 by 1 are considered important and therefore are not going to be nullified. Within the idea of selling something which is important, there are 2 opinions. Something which is generally sold 1 by 1, or something which is exclusively sold 1 by 1. So now let's see that. So Hanicha Lemanda Amr Kol Shadarko Limanos Shaninu. So I understand, according to the opinion that Kol, anything which is Darko Limanos, which is it's the method, it's the way to be counted 1 by 1, to be sold 1 by 1. Okay, I understand. Animals generally are sold 1 by 1. That's the general way. Even though sometimes they are sold, they are sold, but you can buy a herd of sheep, but generally you'll buy animal 1 by 1. So according to that opinion, I understand the Mishnah why the animal that's mixed into the bunch, it will prohibit the entire bunch, because that animal, since it is sold by the what's that? Was it sold by the bunch? Sold by the yeah, but what's the antonym? It's sold by the 1 by 1. It's sold in each. Yeah, each one is sold individually. So since animals are generally sold individually, so therefore it's not going to be nullified. Since it's not nullified, you don't know which animal it is. So you have to assume each animal is that animal, and therefore it's going to be prohibited.
How do you treat fruit? Because most fruit you buy by the pound,
right?
Except the Walmart, you buy by the each.
So that we're going to see. Later. That's a 3rd opinion. Right now, though, you're looking for things that are generally sold 1 by 1. Bananas are generally not sold 1 by 1, right? You buy them by the.
Unless you go to Trader Joe's.
Right. It's funny. You're right. Apples, right?
Apples.
Right.
Yeah. Most fruit, but the update with.
People generally buy 1 apple. Okay. I hear. That's going to be a good. Yeah, that's a good. That's you asking what happens if it's okay, but you're still buying 1 of the apples. The way they decide how much it's worth is by the way, but the general consumer, he buys one apple or he buys a bunch of apples. I hear an argument for one apple. I mean, I don't know. We buy like 3 or 4, and then nobody eats them except for me. So try to encourage them. Eat fruit. No, chocolate. Fine, chocolate. Okay. So either way, if you say the animals are sold, you buy right. So if the animals are sold, since they're sold generally individually, that's why that's the author of our Mishnah. That therefore it's not nullified. That's very good. But if you hold Elamandam S Shadakar S is more limited. They're exclusively sold one by one. Animals are not exclusively sold one by one. They could sometimes be sold, and they are sometimes sold by the herd, by the bunches. So then, Michael and Maymar, what are you going to say about our Mishnah? According to that opinion, how do you understand the Mishnah? The Mishnah should be considered. You should nullify. It should be nullified. The animal should be nullified because it's not sold exclusively one by one. Yeah. Okay. So. Okay. Now let's see this. Where does this come up? Where is this discussion? So the Tanan says the Mishnah, Mishaylo Chavile Tilpan. You have bunches of spices. Fenugreek. I mean, that's just another word of spices. Yeah. Fenugreek. I don't know. What do you put into pizza? Exactly. No one used it. Okay. So fine. So it's spices, fenugreek. So I just can't pronounce it. Okay. Spices. Misha, you have a whole a bundle of this spice, fenugreek, chavile tiltan. However, it's of kilai karen. You inappropriately planted different grains and things like that in your vineyard that you're not allowed to do. That's called kilayim. The shotness is well limited with kilayim. You can't do that. So the production of your this bundle of spices is forbidden. So what do you do with it? So yidlaku literally means you have to light it on fire, but it means that it's prohibited from benefit. Okay. Now what happens if nisarvu ba'acherim? What happens if it gets mixed in another bunch? So how do you do it? Now they put in the parentheses ba'acherim, and that bunch gets mixed into another bunch. The reason why it's in parentheses is because that's not so simple anymore. Once you have something falls into a bunch, fine. Maybe each one is prohibited. Fine. Once that falls into another bunch, part of them falls into, now you have what you call a sveka, a double doubt. Right? You look at the second bunch and you're like, well, maybe it fell in. Maybe it fell into this bunch, maybe it didn't. And even if it did fall into the second pile, who says this is the one that's prohibited? That's called a sveka, and it's generally much more lenient, usually permitted. That's why some take it out, because they would say that in that case permitted. So we'll just go with a regular case. One of these bundles of spices got mixed into a group of other spices, and you cannot identify which is which. So what do? Kulan yidlaku, divrei meir, they're all prohibited for benefit. The chachamim omrim, no, yalu be'echadu masayim. If you have 200 permitted spices, corresponding to this one bundle of fenugreek spice, you have one bundle of prohibited fenugreek falls into 205 bundles of other spices. So that's going to be permitted because just like by meat and milk, we know there's 60. 60 is the rule, but there's other rules by other things. So in this case, the rule is 200. How do we get to a number of 200? Rashi explains that by truma, the rule is 1 in 100. If truma falls into a mixture, if you have 100 things there, it's going to be permitted. Now, truma is only prohibited from eating. It's not prohibited from benefiting from, only from eating. Kilai karen, which is more stringent than truma, is even prohibited from benefiting. We doubled the amount. It needs 200 permitted things to nullify the prohibited item. So that's the chachamim. So argue Rav Meir and the chachamim. Rav Meir said if it's mixed into a bunch, the entire bunch is prohibited. That's obviously more similar to our case with the animals. That's what we need. Chachamim omrim, no, 1 in 200 is good to go. It does not prohibit the entire mixture. Why does Rav Meir say what he says? Shahayir Rav Meir Omer, he says that Kol, they change it to S. Kol Shadar Kol Limanos, anything which is generally sold, Mikdash, V'chamim Omrim, Eino Mikdash. Ella Shisha Dvarim Bilvad. I think the reason why they changed.
Individual unit.
Yeah, but I think they changed it to S because S is going to fit better. Because where are we holding in the Gemara? We're holding by. If you hold that you need something to be exclusively sold by the unit, then what's the explanation of our Mishnah? To that we're bringing a Rav Meir. So if you have the version of the text that says S, it's probably going to fit better into our Gemara. So since these Chavile Tilton, these bundles of fenugreek, they're always sold individually, so therefore it's going to prohibit the entire mixture. Okay, maybe it's called also. Let's see. It's going to be one long mission on it. The truth is, the point that the Gemara wants is going to come at the bottom of the page. So either way you go, the point is that the fenugreek is something which is sold individually. Is it always sold? Is it exclusively sold? We're going to see in a second. So either way, that's Reb Meir's opinion. That's what he holds. It's something which is generally sold it's something which is sold by the unit and not by the group. Therefore, it's not going to be nullified when it gets mixed up into a mixture, even if there's 200 corresponding to it. Chachamim say no such thing, and it'll be nullified as long if there's 200 corresponding to it. Chachamim agree though. Chachamim omrim eino mikdash ela shisha dvarim bavad. There are 6 things that will prohibit the mixture, even if you have, who knows, thousands of things corresponding to them. Chachamim agree that there are 6 unique things that we're going to see in a second that are so unique, they're kosher, they're important, that they will not become nullified. Yeah. So now, right, the things that are usually lost in someone's house, they're usually the things that are not so important, hopefully. Yeah, right? If you lose her wedding ring, you're in big trouble, right? Like the car keys, like I know where it is. You know where it is. I know where it is. So that's yeah. So your Shabbos day notes, where are they? I don't know. In a safer somewhere, So those things. So to here, things that are not so important, they get nullified. Things are important, those stick out, so to speak, and therefore they're not going to get nullified. So what are those things? Those are 6 things. Rabbi Kiva says there's 7 things. What are the 6 or 7 things that are not nullified? The Eluhain egoze perach. These nuts from a place called Perach. The rimone badan, or pomegranates from a place called Badan. Very special nuts, very special pomegranates. The chavios stumos, sealed barrel, presumably of wine. The chilfe trodden, and these are the beet stalks. Thank you. The kilche kruv, and the cabbage stalks. Udalas Yavanis Hanukkah coming up. The Greek gourds. Yeah. So repeat the Greeks and their gourds. So Rabbi Akiva, that's 6 things. Rabbi Akiva adds 1 more. Mosif af kikaros shel balabais. He adds the loaves, home cooked challah, home baked challah. Yeah, the loaves cooked by a person. Those are also very unique and very nice, and very special. So haroi orla, haroi kilai karam. So the ones that are orla and they get mixed in the bunch, they'll prohibit the whole thing as orla. And if it's kilai karam, if it's from a forbidden mixture, it'll prohibit the entire mixture. It will consider the entire mixture to be kilai karam. Okay, fine. That's the background. Now, on this Mishnah, there's a debate. Did Rav Meir mean things that are generally sold? Did Rav Meir mean things that are exclusively sold? We want to know, where was that mentioned, such a distinction between things that are exclusively sold, things that are generally sold, because according to the opinion that things are exclusively sold and only that kind of item is a level of importance that's not nullified, and we're back to the drawing board. What is the understanding of our Mishnah? Animals are generally sold, but not exclusively sold by the individual. So the Itmar Allah, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Es Shadakar Limana Shanino. Rabbi Yochanan says the proper version of the Mishnah is Es Shadakar Limana. Things that are exclusively sold will not be nullified. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Omer Kol Shadakar Limana Shanino. No, it's more liberal. If anything which is generally sold, so it's more of a stringency. It's more expansive. Things that are generally sold by the bundle, by the individual, that is going to be that's not going to be nullified. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's very limited. Only things that are exclusively sold by the bundle, by the individual, only those things are not going to be nullified. Okay. So it says the Gemara, Hanichla, Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish is very good. Our Mishnah, perfect. Animals are generally sold by the individual. Sometimes they're sold by the bunches, so therefore they're not nullified. That makes sense. What's with Rabbi Yochanan? According to you, Rabbi Yochanan, how do you answer our Mishnah? Why are animals not nullified? You're one animal that's permitted for benefit gets mixed into 10,000 animals that are permitted. An animal is generally sold by the individual, but it's not exclusively sold. And yet we say that it seems to be, it's not nullified. So according to you, Rabbi Yochanan, why not? Okay. So here's going to come a third opinion. It's going to be the most liberal opinion, is that it's going to be the opposite. Things that are generally sold by the bunches, but sometimes sold by the individual, even that's enough to not be nullified in a mixture. What is that? There's the apples, yeah. So Amar Papa, Hayitana, Tana Litrakatzios. So Rabbi Yochanan says our author of our Mishnah is the author of the Mishnah called Litrakatzios. Litra is a weight, the equivalent of 100 mana. Litra and Kitzios is going to be dried figs. So you take figs, you dry them out. You take this tool called a miksoa that's going to cut them, cut off their things on the bottom. The stems, thank you. Cut off their stems, and then you're going to press them into kitzios, into these fig cakes. That's going to make a dried fig. So we're going to see now when you're going to smush a truma dried fig into one of the bunches. So we're going to see that. Is it going to prohibit the whole bunch or not? Let's see. But the author is called. It's the author of the Mishnah of Litra Kitzios, the weight of the kitzios. That, according to Rabbi Yochanan, is going to be the author of our Mishnah. Okay. The Omar, next page, 73a. Kol davar sheish bo minyan afilu b'derabbanan lo batel. Anything which, as at all, is sold at some point by the individual. So, like these dried figs, most people sell them in bunches. They sell them, 100 dried figs, 200 dried figs. Maybe you'll say, 30 pounds of dried figs, whatever it is. So they sell them in the bunches. Rarely do they sell them individually. The dried figs individually, usually it goes into a whole bunch of dried figs. But since sometimes they're sold by the individual, so therefore they're enough of importance that they're not going to be nullified, even by something which is only prohibited rabbinically, such as a truma fig. A truma fig is only rabbinical truma. It's not biblical. It's not grain. It's not wine. It's only going to be rabbinic, even though it's only prohibited rabbinically. But still, this opinion is going to say it has enough importance that it's not going to be nullified. The kosh came with the and for sure something like our Mishnah, like a korban, that's prohibited from to bring up an animal that's prohibited from benefit. That's going to be biblical. So for sure, on a biblical level, if it's something which is at some point sold by the individual, that is going to have enough importance and not be nullified. That's going to be the author of Mishnah. Now, where do we have such an idea? Litra Kitzios? Let's see. The Tanya Litra Kitzios Shedarsa Alpi Eagle. So, okay, so you took a weight of these dried figs that are truma, and you ended up stomping on them into a mold. Yeah.
Into the mouth of the round mold. It's not know which mold. It is not into which mold press that.
Yeah, Rashi says that it's interesting. I mean, the instrument is called an eagle, also a circle. That's the name of the instrument. So you use this eagle, the instrument, to stomp it into a eagle, into a circle, into some kind of circular mold. So okay, the Eino Yodea be'eze eagle darsa. You're not sure which mold did you stomp this truma into. So I guess you have like a I don't know. For some reason, I had a hard time picturing this. I guess you just have a bunch of dried figs that are put into some kind of circular mold, and now you take truma, dried fig, and you put it onto one of the molds. But you don't know which one you put it onto. I guess you have like 100 cholent pots. You have a cholent cook-off, and you put the chacham walks in and puts some truma into one of the cholent pots. Figure out which one to put it into. right? So now what happens? So alpi eagle, but any odea, but eagle darsa. You don't know which one you took this instrument and you smush it onto. Or another case, alpi chavis, in odea, but chavis darsa. I guess they would use their barrel sometimes for holding the dried figs. So you did the same thing. You smushed it onto one of the barrels, and you don't know which barrel you put on the truma dried fig. Or a third case, alpi kaveris, in odea, basic kaveris darsa. You use the hive, some kind of beehive, to hold your figs, and now you put onto one of the beehives, and you know which one you put it on. So what do you do? So now, Rabbi Meir Omer, the following. Rabbi Meir says there's going to be a dispute. Rabbi Meir said that Rabbi Eliezer says Omer, right? So, did you do it? No, he did it. Yeah, I said that he did it. He said, yeah. Rabbi Meir says like this. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, very fancy. So once again, we know that if you smush the truma onto one of these things, it's not going to be on the bottom. It's going to be somewhere on the top, right? So, correct. It could be if it was somewhere in the middle, it would be nullified. Could be. But if it's at the top, really, you shouldn't care about the other. If it's going to be somewhere here. The fact that there's all these dried figs should not nullify this. What should you do? Look at all your barrels, or all your hives, or all your molds, and then see at the tips of them. You should factor. Are there 100 of those? If there's 100 of those, then it'll nullify the truma because 1 in 100. That should be the only factor here. The fact that there's 100 figs over here, that should not nullify over here because it can only be here. It can't be in the middle somewhere because you stuck it onto the edge. However, Rabbi Eliezer is going to go a little fancy. Since it's only rabbinic, he's going to say we're going to be a little bit lenient. Rowan esa elyonos kihilu hein prudos. So you look at the top of these molds where you're hoping the truma, or somewhere that one of these molds is going to be the truma. You look at it as if it's separate. Vetachtonos malos esa elyonos. So you don't have 100 molds. You don't have 100 edges of the mold that the truma could be on. However, and the bottom of the molds, like we said, should not really count. However, we look at all the bottom of the molds and the tops of the molds. It sounds like one big mixture, and therefore, if you combine the bottom of the molds, if you take that into account, you're going to have much more than 100 and nullify your truma. So even though really the only thing we should be looking at are the very edges where you could have smushed it onto, and you don't have 100 of those. If you have 30 of those. But now, if you could separate it from the edge, it sounds like once you separate it, you can look at it as one big mixture now. So then if you look at it as one big mixture as part of the bunch, you will have 100 figs corresponding to that edge, to the edge of your beehive or your barrel, and that will nullify the tops. And therefore, we're going to say that they're going to be actually 100 figs corresponding to your truma figs. Yeah. So that is what Rabbi Eliezer does, and therefore he's going to say that they are nullified. So Rabbi Yeshua Omer, probably the simplest understanding, im yesh mea pumin yalu ve'im lav hapumin asurin. He doesn't go so fancy like Rabbi Eliezer. Look at, if you have 100 beehives, if you have 100 barrels, the truma's was smushed on. It's only on the front of it, only on the top of it. If you have 100 barrels, okay, so 1 in 100, it's nullified. If you don't, then all the edges of the barrels are going to be prohibited. However, the pumin, the lips, the edge of the barrels are going to be prohibited. The hashulim mutarin. But once again, right, the same way, let's say, I don't know, that a piece of cheese fell on top of a little drop of milk, a piece of cheese fell, for sure it fell on the top. Assuming that it's not being cooked now, then it's going to transfer taste. But it's on the table. You have 100 pieces of chicken or 50 pieces of chicken, and you know that somewhere something that looks like chicken, but it's really dairy, whatever the case. I don't know. Fell on top of the chicken. It's only on the top. It's not on the bottom of the chicken. So you'll cut off all the tops, and throw them in the garbage. And the bottom is going to be fine. So here, the mold of truma is only placed on the top, and therefore the tops are all going to be, if you have 100, they'll be permitted. Less than 100, they'll be prohibited. But the bottoms are all going to be good. That's according to Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, that the debate is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda says that Rabbi Eliezer says, Omer, im yesh sham meya pumin, if there's 100 lips, 100 edges of the barrels of the beehive, yalu, v'im lav ha-pumin asurim. So Rabbi Yehuda says that Rabbi Eliezer is not so lenient. He goes like Rav Meir's version of Rabbi Yeshua. If you have 100, nullified. If not, they're all prohibited. Except not exactly like Rabbi Yeshua. He says the whole thing is prohibited, even the bottom. So Rabbi Eliezer will say if you have 100 tops, then it'll be permitted. If not, then all of the truma is going to be prohibited. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, no. Afilu yesham shalosh me'as pumin lo yalu. We're very strict. Even if there's 300 tops, it's not going to be permitted. Now, why does he say this? Because this is what we need. Why is Rabbi Yeshua so strict? You have 300 edges of the barrel. The truma is only on one of the edges. The general rule is truma is nullified 1 in 100. Here you have 1 in 300. Why is it not nullified? It must be because these figs, even though they're generally sold by the bunches, but because some of them are sold by the individual, therefore it has enough of importance and it's not going to be nullified. And that was our answer for Rabbi Yochanan, who the author of our mission is. It's Rabbi Yehuda's version of Rabbi Yeshua. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yeshua's version of the Mishnah, that's our answer. Okay. Now, Darsa be'eagle, you stomp these figs, you smush them with this instrument called an eagle. The Einiodeh be'ezem makom be'eagle Darsa, but you're not sure where exactly in this whole circle, did you put the truma in the north, the west, the south, the east? Where'd you do it? Oh, the tzvona or in the north, oh, the drum or in the south. If you don't know where on this circle mold you smush the truma into, so then divrei hakol yalu. Then everyone's going to agree that it's going to be nullified because you can't see it anywhere. It's not recognizable at all. It's not that you know it's on the edge. You don't know where it is. It's somewhere mixed into here. So because of that, that's going to it's not at all recognizable, and therefore it's going to be nullified. Okay, fine. So that would be the second answer to our Mishnah, that it's something which sometimes is counted by the individuals. So right now we have how many answers for our Mishnah? We have the first answer was something which is generally counted by the individual, even though it's not exclusively. Animals are like that. That was the first answer. We said it, but that itself is a debate. According to Reish Lakish, it's good. According to Rabbi Yochanan, what are you going to say? We say, okay, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have to say that he goes like the opinion that as long as something is sometimes sold by the individual, even though generally it's sold by the bunch, that's still not going to be nullified. That was the second answer of our Mishnah. And the third answer makes you wonder, why do we say this in the beginning? Seems like the most simple one. Rav Ashi Amar, afilu temer Rabbanan. Even the Rabbanan who argue on Rav Meir that this idea of things that are counted are not nullified. Right? Until now, it's all within Rav Meir. There was just two opinions within Rav Meir: generally counted or exclusively counted. It was all within the world of Rav Meir. Says the Gemara, though, even the Rabbanan will agree. How could they agree? Balei chaim chashini v'lo bakri. Balei chaim, animals themselves. The fact that you're an animal itself gives you importance, and that itself you're not going to nullify. And that itself it won't be nullified. So that's a third answer. So two answers within the world of Rav Meir, and one answer within the world of the Rabbanan. Fine. Okay. Now we're going to get fancier and fancier. So I don't understand. The rule by a majority is what? You have a bunch of animals. One of them is prohibited and the rest are permitted. And you told me that the entire mixture is prohibited now. I have a great idea. Why don't you just take one of the animals out, right? And then what do you say? Anything that's removed from a majority will take on the characteristics of the majority. So you separated it from the bunch. You took the animal out from the bunch. You have 10,000 animals, 9,999 are permitted. One is prohibited. Yeah? So, yeah, but now you've removed it from the bunch. And now you want to know, is this animal that's been removed from the bunch, is that permitted or is that prohibited? What's the rule of thumb there? You say you have to assume it came from the majority. What's the majority? Permitted. But why did you prohibit the entire bunch of animals? Just take one out. How's it go? Take one out. Okay. Take one out. You take one out and you say, this is permitted. And that's it. Why is the whole bunch prohibited? Take one out and offer it as a sacrifice. No, you don't know. You don't know anything. The outlook is exactly the same. Yeah. So, yeah. So the nimshach, the nikrav chad minayu, take one out and sacrifice one of them. Why is the entire thing prohibited? Yeah. So why? V'neima called the parish meruba parish. The rule is whatever, right? Classic case. We'll see. It's a little more complicated, but you're walking around and you find example. You find outside the kosher, which might be, after Simchas Torah here, you walk around and you pick up a candy. It doesn't say if it's kosher or not, right? But you know that majority of candies you're assuming are all kosher, so fine. So because we're going to that case in a second. So Nema called the parish meruba parish. Everything came from the majority, and therefore it should be permitted. So says the Gemara, you can't do that. Why? Nimshach. You can't just take one out because habale kavua. We'll explain the words hopefully in a second. The kol, next page, kavua, is kemekta al mektadami. So this is really the source of this rule, which we're going to explain in a second. It's really a pasuk. It's a verse. The logic behind it is either there is logic or there isn't logic behind it. But I happen to always struggle with this idea. However, the idea is like that when there's something which is set in place, so then it becomes kol kavua. If it's set, it's kemekta al mektadami. So if you buy meat from a store, if you walk into a store and you buy meat from a store and then you forgot which store you bought it from, that's the case. And there are 9 kosher, 1 not kosher, or 9 not kosher and 1 kosher. So we don't say you go after the majority. Since you bought it from a place that's stationary, you bought it from you bought it from a store. So it's stationary, it's fixed. So then that will take on 50%. So in the case of the 9 butcher shops that are kosher, 1 not kosher, if you know you bought it from a store, you walked out of a store, but you don't know which store you walked out of, we don't view it as 9 against 1, we view it as 50-50. Now, at the end of the day, it's a pasuk by throwing a rock and you end up killing somebody, you're not sure who you killed. That's a Gemara Sanhedrin says it. So in our case, all the animals are stationary. They're right here. They're stationary. Taking something from something which is stationary, that itself has it's called kavua, it's stationary, and therefore it's kemekta al mekta. You don't view it as 1 to 10,000. You're going to view it as 5,000 to 5,000 because it's stationary. Being stationary breaks the rules. Exactly the logic is different opinion how to explain it, but that's what the verse tells us. It's really a verse in Sanhedrin. So, meaning that the whole rule of when you separate from a majority, what would be the classic case? If you find a piece of meat on the ground, and you don't know where it came from, and 9 of the stores are a majority, are kosher, and 1 of the stores are not kosher, then you could assume it came from the majority. When you walk into a store, which is stationary, and you remove a piece of meat from there, and you forgot which store you went to, we don't say this rule. So if it's confusing you, it's confusing me too. This is it's really for ksuvas. Ksuvas talks about this a lot, but that's the that's the rule. So in this case, they're stationary. And therefore, since they're stationary, you don't say the rule that if it's been removed from the majority, it'll take on the majority, because once it's stationary, you have to view the whole bunch as 50-50. That's called kola kavua kemekta al mektadami. Says the Gemara, fine, you know what you do? Make them run around in circles. Ela nichbeshinu, the 90. Let them go around in circles. Now nothing is stationary. So then you take out an animal from the bunch. It's not stationary. It's moving around. And now Venema called the parish, Meruba parish. So why don't you say that? So really, the Gemara really accepts that answer. And if you were to do that, that would really be fine, because then it's not stationary anymore. Now, so now, Amarava, we have to give a new answer. So why don't you say that in our Mishnah? So here comes interesting decree. Amarava Gzeira Shema Yavo Asara Kohanim Bebas Achas Vayakrivu. We're worried. Let's say that there are 10 animals. 10 is the majority in this case. Let's just say that what's going to happen? You're worried that 10 Kohanim are going to go and take the animals and offer them up simultaneously. And if they're going to take 10 animals simultaneously and go offer them up, so we're worried one of that is for sure going to be prohibited. If they take it one by one, so then that's fine, because each animal you remove is from the majority, and the majority is permitted. But if 10 Kohanim come at once and take 10 animals, and we're assuming the case where 10 is the majority, if they take 10 at once and they sacrifice them up, so then that's going to be a problem, because one of the 10 is going to be potentially prohibited, and therefore you're offering something prohibited up on the altar. Since we're worried about that happening, we say that the whole mixture is going to be prohibited. Amarle. Ooh, okay. We'll start with Amarle. Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. Make an omelet tomorrow also. Yeah. Have a great day.